The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're so thrilled to be here with you today. It is Monday, October 21st. We got a lot going on and I'm really excited about today's show because I guarantee you're going to learn something today that may change the course of how you look at things. At least look at things, if not how you do things moving on in the future. We've got an amazing guest that's going to be joining us in about 20 minutes, David Humphrey, who has been a regular on the show, but unbelievably, we haven't had him on in like 4 years. So we need an update about what he's got going on. And believe me, it's the big ideas, exciting stuff. Before we get to that, a lot that we got to cover. Of course, this is the last Monday show before our big fundraiser, the All Ghouls Gala. This is a adult Halloween party that's going to be held on Saturday, which is the 26th of October. Now game 2 of the World Series. Now, I want to tell everybody, if you're in the Los Angeles area and the ticket price to go to the World Series is upwards of $2K per ticket. If that's too rich for your blood, as it is for mine, but you want to be someplace at a great celebration, having a good time with a bunch of people where you can be watching I keep calling it the Super Bowl, the World Series. I know the difference. So if you'd like to experience that, for a mere $125, you can come to the All Ghouls Gala. It is open bar with amazing food, all you can eat gourmet food. Plus you'll be helping an amazing charity, Autism Care Today, raise funds for truly amazing things. They give grants to individuals and families that are dealing with autism and need some help and support for things like iPads, assistance dogs, medical copays, tuition to camps, all kinds of things that are often outside of what we can afford to pay, right? So they give grants for those kinds of things, which is really, really remarkable. So it's a party with a purpose. That's right. You heard me say that, a party with a purpose. And you can be watching the World Series. We have made sure that there are multiple screens where you can be someplace watching the World Series and then party and drink and do whatever. I want to tell you that this year we've done something different with the party. That one of the fundraising things that we're having at the party is this amazing silent auction. And I mean, it's amazing. I especially want to do a shout out to Leanne Ford. Oh my goodness, Leanne has done such amazing, and I think she goes by a different name now, but Leanne Napton, excuse me, it has done amazing work. She has gotten so many things from so many people for this silent auction. I guarantee you there's something for every single price point. There's everything from meal gift cards to jewelry to trips to even tickets to a Broadway show. So get out. There are Coach purses. There are cupcakes. There's everything under the sun, plus which some amazing alcohol that is being featured. There's one bottle of wine in the silent auction that's valued at $700. So I've never had a $700 bottle of wine. I don't know if you have, but it will be being auctioned in the silent auction. And here's the good news. You don't have to be there. You can bid from wherever you are. Isn't that fabulous? So my friends, I think it goes live on Wednesday of this week, and we'll make sure that you guys know about it so that you can log in and register. And it's on this wonderful site where if you bid and then you get outbid, it notifies you. And all of that, the end time for it will be at the end of the party on Saturday night. So party with a purpose. I think we have a video about the All Ghouls Gala that we can show you. Chris, do we have that? Yes, we do. So let's watch that now.
Since 2005, Autism Care Today has distributed more than $2 million in grants to families with autism. Grants for things like copays on ABA therapy, protective fencing, speech and language assistive devices like iPads, and so much more. This year, Act Today's third annual All Ghouls Gala will take place on October 26th in Woodland Hills. There will be food, drinks, celebrities, and a silent auction. Click the QR code now and get your tickets and help this amazing organization support the families who need it most.
Did I mention that it's costume party? Yes, it's a Halloween adult costume party, so you do have to come in a costume. It doesn't have to be elaborate. We've had people just draw on kitty whiskers before, but some people go like really all out. And there is a costume contest with 4 different awards, and there are statuettes plus lovely gifts that you win if you win that. So not to be missed. My friends, I will be there. Dr. Grant Pichet will be there, and you should be there too. All right. Like to get started today by reminding all of you that if you're watching us, we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. Our wonderful, fabulous Chris Desmond is going to show some of those to you on the screen, but we want to remind those of you who are listening in podcast, and we know that that's the vast majority of you, that you can download our podcasts for free wherever you get podcasts. Now, that is free to you, but obviously there is a cost that must be covered for that, which is why you will hear advertisements that will play during the podcast. We hope that you embrace those sponsors because we certainly appreciate them making it free for you. However, some of you have said to us, I'm busy doing something while I'm listening to the podcast. I would prefer to pay a little bit and have it ad free. We have that for you now. You can go to glow.fm/autism-live. When you subscribe there for $5 a month, you get everything, every show that we do that goes to podcast. It immediately goes into your inbox, sans ads, totally ad-free. That's $5 a month. It's actually even a little bit cheaper if you pay for it across a year. That's glow.fm/autism-live. Otherwise, enjoy the ads and embrace them. Also want to let you guys know, and my mind just went completely blank. I had something really important to tell you, and I don't know what it was. But I want to remind you, I know, that you get everything that the Autism Network does there, which is not just Autism Live. You get Autism Live, Ask Dr. Doreen, Stories from the Spectrum, Today's Hyperfixation, and absolutely everything else that we do, including covering the toy guide, which is coming up. We are just mere days away from making the toy guide live for 2024. And oh my gosh, we get some good toys this year. Okay. So also want to remind you, our mission here at the Autism Network is that our whole purpose is to provide information and inspiration to that larger autism community that starts with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum. No matter what word you use to describe that, whether you refer to yourself as neurodivergent, neurodiverse, whether you say that you are autistic or on the spectrum or have autism, we welcome and try to provide information to, for, and about those individuals. But we also include in our audience all the people who love those individuals, because we believe that together we can work to provide a strong base of people who agree that being on the spectrum, you have all the rights and all of the opportunities that anyone would. Anna, we're saying good morning to you. How are you? Which reminds me, you guys can be writing in right now. We've got an amazing guest who's going to be joining us in just a few minutes, David Humphrey. And believe me, I'm going to have questions. You're going to have questions, but it's all good. So feel free to write in now with any questions that you have or throughout the program. Okay, time for us to do the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani are those experts talking about. What does this term have to do with us? How can this term save us 5 minutes and $5 as we move through the world? We always used to give you the actual definition, and then we would make fun of it because it would be filled with more jargon, and then we would give you a working definition. And now we've seen that people are getting better with their definitions. Hallelujah, right? But we still give you 2 definitions to help you have a base of understanding. And often we will start with a definition from AI because that's a very interesting thing and sometimes wrong. So let's take a look what we have today. Today's term is FAPE. And our actual definition from AI Google, FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. It is a federal law that guarantees that children, well, IDEA is the federal law, that FAPE is not a federal law, but it comes in under, see, AI is wrong, but closely associated. There it is. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and Rehabilitation Act of 1973 are the federal laws that protect this. So what it means is that every child in the United States has the right to a free, appropriate public education. This ensures that even if a child has a disability, that they receive a free public education. Because my friends, there was a time when that was not the case. That if your child went to school and had a disability, the public school could say to you, we're not equipped to deal with this. You need to go home. And good luck. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Right? Frightening times. Let's go on to our working definition. This is from the Summary of Educational Rights from California.gov. FAPE means special education and related services designed for a student's unique needs. The student's education must be designed to help the student make progress in school. Special education must also be designed to help the student learn skills for independent living. Now, I put this definition in because so many of you have been writing to me lately that you're at your IEPs, and because a lot of you have this 6-week thing that we built into your IEPs where we were going to do the first 6 weeks and reevaluate to see how things are going. And many of you are writing into me with a lot of the same issues. That some of you, you're being told that your child has no educational need for an IEP, even though they have a qualifying diagnosis of autism, that the school has tested them and found that there is no educational need because your child is doing great academically. But what they're forgetting is that the law says that your child has a right to a free, appropriate education, and that it means your child must be making progress in school, and that your student must learn skills for independent living. Schools love to say, oh, well, we don't do anything that's not educational, except the law says you have to build skills for independent living. That means social. That means the social piece. If your child is having trouble making friends, then your child, under the law, IDEA, they have a qualifying diagnosis, write in some independent living skills and some social skills. That means that sometimes we need to have aids during lunchtime. I know schools love to say, oh, well, we'll pay for a one-to-one aid, but not during lunchtime. No, my friends, end to end, right? So this is very important. Also, the making progress in school. They can no longer just park your child in a special ed class and say, we're not trying to make any goals happen or no meaningful goals happen. The Supreme Court, the latest case that they solved, said very clearly that de minimis was not appropriate, that the definition appropriate could not be de minimis, which is another way of saying the bare minimum, that there has to be progress in school. So these are all things that go in your favor and go in your child's favor. So FAPE, very important, and the platform upon which you're going to argue everything. I always say to people, we all understand what free means. We understand what public means. We understand what education means as long as we understand that it's making progress. But the word that gets contentious is appropriate. What is appropriate for your child? Well, I don't know about you, but when my child was having IEPs, I went and bought like 32 dictionaries at used bookstores until I found one that had a definition of appropriate that I liked because it said effective. That appropriate is effective. And I took that into every IEP meeting, was like, how is this effective? Show me how this is effective. You can't. So therefore it's not. I just spent the weekend and I was looking at somebody's IEP and the school was saying, everything is fine, everything is working, but they had also taken data on what was happening with the child and the child was still eloping. That's not appropriate. If what you're doing and the child is still eloping, that's not effective, that's not appropriate, which means we need more support. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure these things out. You know what I'm saying? So very important. I also want to say, so many of you have written in and said that you watched our series about how to ask for a one-on-one aid, how to have a good quality IEP process, and your check-in for the fall to see if everything is working with the IEP. And it has been so deeply gratifying for me that so many of you have written in and said that things are going better because you use the things we talked about, and that so many of you got the one-to-one aid, that you have no idea how happy that makes me, knowing that we're giving you tools that you're then taking in to those IEPs and making it happen. I'm so proud of you for being that kind of a parent, that you go in, and because they can be intimidating, right? An IEP can be so intimidating. I was a former teacher, and so I had been already on both sides of the IEP. Was I intimidated always? Always. But when we remember that we're in there fighting the good fight for our children and that the law is on our side, it becomes much easier. I love the one dad that one of the last IEP meetings I was going to for my son, and I had to leave work early to go to it, and he was visiting, and he saw that I was a little tense, and he said, "What's going on? This is not like you." And I said, "Oh, I got to go to this IEP meeting." And he said to me, "Oh, kabuki theater." And I said, "What?" Now, my degree, I have a master's degree in theater. I know what kabuki theater is. It's a type of Japanese theater where the actors put on these masks and they do very broad movements, like if the mask is angry and they do these broad movements. And he said, "Oh, you don't have to be upset when you go to your IEP meeting. You can be the actor underneath who is totally fine and not angry. Just put on the angry mask, put on the outraged mask, but you don't have to be mad. You know you're going to win. The law is on your side." And I went, "Oh my gosh, I think he's like, have you ever not gotten what your child needed?" And I went, "No, but twice they filed due process." Did it work out in the end? Yeah. And he goes, "Then maybe you don't have to get so upset about it. Just know you're going to keep putting on the mask. You're going to keep showing up. You're going to keep demanding that they give you what your child needs and is appropriate, right? And just know that it's all going to be okay." And that, everything just sort of settled. And I went, "Oh, we're going to win." So I already know what the outcome is. I just have to go through the steps. I can put on a mask. I can be okay as a parent. It was a big, big moment for me. I hope you guys can take that. Anna says, "Yes, we thank you for that. We asked for a one-on-one aid, one-on-one OT, PT, and speech. Sensei stated he could not sit still for more than a few seconds. Therefore, I asked, how do you expect him to sit in a group setting if he can't sit still? Therefore, I request one-on-one for all." They agreed. Use their own data to make my point. Yes, Anna, you're a rock star. Plus, I provided video from my sessions with ABA at home that he is capable of sitting and attending with the proper help. Anna for the win. Anna for the win. And listen, Anna, you know what? That's going to change how your child learns at school for this next little while. I just want you to congratulate yourself. You showed up for your kiddo. You took what you knew. You used their own data against them, which is brilliant. You're awesome. You're absolutely awesome. I hope you're patting yourself on the back for it, because that's when we get to the good stuff and to better days. Someday you're going to look in the rearview mirror and go, I showed up for my kid. And as a result, we're in a place that I had hoped I wanted to be, right? Amazing. All right. So onward, talking about even more amazing things. We've got a great guest who is joining us. And this is not his first rodeo. He has been with us on Autism Live many times before, but we haven't had him on since, 2019, which is very remiss on my part. I'm talking about David Humphrey, and he is the founder of the Forum Institute and co-founder of the Autism Treatment Network, in collaboration with 17 leading hospitals, including Massachusetts General Hospital. His work with Forum focuses on enhancing protocols for safer pregnancies and healthier babies through the P2I project, which engages international OBGYN groups. David's international spirit is evidenced from his past ventures, including founding the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. You guys know we talk about them all the time, MAPS, and medical CME training company, and leadership roles at the Autism Society of America and the Autism Research Institute. He also led Kirkman Group, Inc., which was recognized by Oregon Business Magazine as one of the top 100 companies to work for in Oregon and top 100 green companies. Notably, he also served as legal counsel for Dr. Bernie Rimland for more than a decade, and we'll talk about Bernie Rimland and his legacy. But welcome back to the show, David Humphrey. David, we're so thrilled to have you.
Hi. Well, I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. I guess I want to start by having you talk just briefly about what the forum is and what the Forum Institute is, and and kind of to pair with that, some things have changed since we've last had you on, and I'd love to have an update about things that we now know about autism because of the work that you guys are doing that we didn't know maybe 4 years ago.
Okay. The forum started, it was called the Autism Forum, in discussions with Bernie Rimland of the need for laying a scientific foundation for medical conditions with autism. When we started in the early 2000s, autism was seen as a condition that could not be treated and did not have any medical underlying conditions. So symptoms of autism were seen as gastroenterology symptoms, autoimmune symptoms, and they were not thought about as medical conditions, but they were thought about as simply part of an autism neurological diagnosis. So we started the Autism Forum to help gather the top universities and government to take a look at what are the medical conditions comorbid with a diagnosis of autism and separating and treating those two. So we published extensively in pediatrics some of the top papers that the government had at the time, and established in a number of studies and hundreds of think tanks that autism is a medical condition. It is treatable, and that was the basis. The reason we changed it to the forum is we noticed that the pattern of the cause of a lot of the medical symptoms reached beyond autism, whether it was celiac disease or dyslexia, autism deficit disorders, deficiencies, and autism was merely one of a number of conditions. So the emphasis then was on how do we go ahead and take a look at what the origins of these medical conditions were. And that obviously took us to conception. And where do these originate from? And again, I want to be very careful. We're not talking about the genetic makeup of a person with autism. We're talking about things that develop, such as gastro disease. Where does it come from? Where do the food allergies come from? Where do the problems with homocysteine levels creating heart conditions come from?
So I want to pause then just for a second, because you said something in the pre-interview that just really got my mind swirling, talking about the genetic component of autism, that we do see that we now know that there is a genetic difference for individuals with autism. Stop me if I say anything that's inaccurate. And that genetic component, if it is not in any way damaged by toxicity, we know has huge benefits. Am I correct? Absolutely.
And one of the things that we worked with the government early on is that the government, Shannon, saw autism genetic makeups as a defect. And when we started with them, the idea was, since it wasn't treatable as a defect, do what you do with Down syndrome. Once you track the genetic defect, you go and counsel for abortions. What we said is, wait a second. The autism genes are an emerging gene set that are unbelievably valuable. As Temple Grandin would say, I see many of you out here have the autism genes. Without us, you guys, other guys, would be just yakking around the campfires with your big ideas. There is a particular mindset with the autism genes and Asperger's, which really are futuristic, and IQs range anywhere from 10 to 20 points higher. What is happening is they're very susceptible to damage for environmental toxicity and environmental insults. And that has been mixed up and confused. over the last 30 years. And it's something that we're trying to go ahead and unravel so that the person born with the autism genes has a way of expressing their full potential. And those that have conditions and medical conditions are treated. But obviously, what we want to do is not put a stigma with people that have been diagnosed with autism as somehow lacking respect and dignity. They actually have advanced genes, I think, beyond the normal genes that we see.
I agree with you. I look at my son's brain and it's so much more elegant than mine. But it doesn't change the fact that he had some challenges. That one of the things that you guys postulate is if you take the toxicity part of it out of it, and as you said, they can reach the full potential without some of the things like celiac and other the more disabling aspects of it that aren't necessary but are a result of damage from toxicity, which obviously none of us wants for someone that we love. So out of all of this was born P2I, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you want to talk about P2I?
Well, I think so. Let me do a quick PowerPoint presentation. I'll try not to take too much time on it, but I think it's important to lay the groundwork because it's a lot of work and it's obviously got a lot of complications. So P2I, and we now have on our board the former head of the OBGYNs internationally and the head of the environmental portion of the OBGYNs internationally, Nicole, and this is Dr. Jeannie Convery, incredible leaders in the medical community that are embracing the notion of P2I as a solution for the onslaught of what we see as a lot of chronic conditions. And part of it is everybody knows this, right? Shannon, we're just immersed with a whole sea of chemicals that started in about 1970 and they've exploded. And only 1% have undergone any safety testing at all. And because of that, we've seen an awful lot of conditions occur. And if we take all of these together, it is about 38% of all the children by the age of 5 will have medical conditions that they likely will battle with for a lifetime. Now, it used to be we had to make the case that we just believe this ourselves and some alternative medicine. But I want to direct your viewers to the most important document I've ever been involved with. And this is the NIH and EPA document. A lot of it was based on the research work we had done. And it says the Environmental Health and Disease Prevention Research Centers, and it's a little awkward how they explain that, but they're basically saying that chronic disease in children is 60 to 90% environmental and nutrition. It's not genetic. Leukemia is 98% environmental. There's a very small portion of kids with leukemia that have genetic conditions. That's why it's increasing at the sharp rate. So this was a very critical study that we noted in Pediatrics, which is the official journal for the American Academy of Pediatrics. They found when they measured core blood, Shannon, 95% of the women had extremely high levels of chemicals during pregnancy. This did not occur in 1970, 1960, 1950. This is a modern occurrence. Very dangerous chemicals such as heavy metals, phthalates, organophosphates that damage all children. And this is the reason we have such high amounts, so that if we take a look at healthy children by the age of 5 with no medical conditions, we're looking at maybe 60 or 65%. 35% have long-term chronic conditions, or they had miscarriages, preterm developmental disabilities. So this was a landmark paper we published. And again, this was a lot to do with Dr. Rimland and his contributions financially and inspirationally. We published in Pediatrics 83 pages. This provided the foundation for the fact that individuals with autism had unusually high rates of gastrointestinal conditions. Before that, Shannon, these kids were seen, even though they had projectile vomiting and diarrhea, these were all seen as neurological conditions, if you can believe that. So this basically changed medicine. And right now, when people are diagnosed with gastrointestinal conditions, about 70% have gastro conditions. One of the people in the Autism Forum was Jim Perrin, who became president of the AAP, American Academy of Pediatricians, and he published dozens of articles in Pediatrics about medical conditions. This was the Rimland agenda, and we brought it into the inner sanctum of medicine. So basically, the fetus was thought to be able to be protected against all of these, but they're not. Lead, cadmium, mercury hitchhike onto nutrients and go into the placenta and cause damage. So what do we do about this?
You're going so fast, though. I want to read them. Slow down, David. I wanted to read the slides. So you've got time. Go ahead. Okay.
So here's our vision. The vision is that all women will minimize the impact of environmental exposures on the health and the health of their families. PWI will bridge environmental and health from preconception to infancy. In other words, we want to start, and I talked to Stephen Shore, who I love. Stephen has been a friend for years.
Yeah.
And for those viewers that don't know him, he's an adult with autism, teaches at Adelphia University. And Stephen defined PWI as good health starts with conception.
Yeah.
Good health does not start at 10 or 11 years old. Good health starts with conception. We want to have the fetus protected from man-made chemicals, and we want them to have good nutrition. So we want to have them be exposed to good, clean food and non-processed food and not sugar. Now, Shannon, here's an interesting article that just came out at this Columbia University. A lot of people say, well, what do metals cause? So this is a fascinating study because it took adults and put them into 4 quadrants from no metals to the higher level of metals. And as the range increased for additional metals, this is lead, mercury, and cadmium, Shannon, the death rate with adults increased 60%.
Yeah.
Not 10%, 60%. What's the last time any doctor have said, we should take a look at your heavy metals, Shannon, because it could create an extra 60% risk in you dying. Individuals with autism tend to accumulate heavy metals. It happened during the gestation period where they were faced with a lot of heavy metals and they just overwhelmed their system. That's why this research is important. Here's another one will just blow you away, Shannon, and your viewers. Lancet, which is probably the most respected medical publication, said lead is responsible for 40% of all the adult heart attacks. Shannon, 40%. That's 320,000 people dying because they have excess lead in their system. When did this happen and why aren't people more aware of it? Okay.
And why aren't our doctors testing for it? I don't.
Doctors testing for it. And that's a good segue into, I started years ago with Kirkman and building a laboratory, which I try to make the best laboratory on the planet for testing products. So I brought in mass spec equipment. I worked with universities, and we built a 12,000 square foot facility filled with high-end tech mass spec machines measuring lead, cadmium. We found prenatal supplements with 1,000 times more uranium that was safe to have. This stuff is coming from China. So we wanted to make sure at the time, and I'd sold Kirkman's, it's not a pitch for Kirkman, but we wanted to make sure that the Kirkman supplements did not contain the very thing that aggravated medical conditions, which are heavy metals and pesticides. But what we did 5 years ago, Shannon, is we started to measure the very same things in blood and urine done with high-tech equipment, very inexpensively, with a single drop of blood or a little bit of urine or a little bit of fecal matter. We could run some mind-blowing tests. So here's the ones, and this is breaking news. So we're going to do for the lab testing industry what we did with Kirkman, and that is to make tests that are absolutely designed for the pregnancy period and for individuals with chronic diseases and conditions, medical conditions. So we will be testing for chemical body burden, heavy metals, sleep and stress test, microbiome, which is gut health, hormones, both men and women's hormones. This is really important, especially in the autism community. And vitamin D testing will be vitamin A and C, and genetic testing. This is a big deal here, Shannon. Folic acid genetic defect. It's called the MTHFR, and a large portion of women, 1/3, have that genetic defect, and they can't absorb folic acid very well.
Yeah.
And that results in a lot of health issues. And with children with autism and adults with autism, it causes a lot of anxiety, causes a lot of depression, And once discovered, you just take folate and it cures it. We're also doing a genetic test on can you absorb nutrition very well. And we're also testing the well and city water. All of these tests are done simply with a little bit of urine or a little bit of saliva or fecal matter. So there's no great problem. They're done. And the test results are dozens and dozens of pages. They're reviewed by a medical doctor before we send them out. I am so proud of this work. It's taken us 5 years. It's a CLIA approved testing, which means it's passed by the regulatory offices that regulate laboratories. And again, we have wonderful people, and this has been a dream of mine because without testing, you really don't know where you're sitting, just like you mentioned.
Absolutely.
So if you walked into a doctor's office and they said, well, Shannon, do you have high blood pressure? You'd say, oh, no, I don't think so. But when they take the test and you have high blood pressure, right?
Yeah.
Now you know it. And then you say, how can I treat it? So one of the things we're doing with the test results is we're showing a step-by-step guide. If you have high lead levels, what is a safe way to remove them? And there's options beyond dangerous chelation. It's simply taking increased glutathione, which are B vitamins and vitamin C and selenium, and it makes an amazing difference in your bodies. And then avoid, we go step by step where you can avoid it. So here are pictures internally. These are mass spec machines. I hate to say this, but these are each one of them has a value of a house. Very expensive technology. And we have a great group of high-skilled people here that are scientists that are dedicated to this work. But here's the big take-home slide. The P2I, which is let's measure women during pregnancy for toxicity. Let's have them resolve it. Shannon, if you have pesticide accumulations at the highest level, the child will lose about 5 points in IQ by the age of 10. Oh. But if you measure it and discover it, you know how long it takes to get rid of it? 7 days.
Oh my goodness.
7 days. You just have to avoid taking it and cut out restaurant food and wash your vegetables. So P2I, this is really cool. P2I, the goals of P2I have been endorsed by all of these different groups. American Academy of Pediatricians, Natural Medicine, the OBGYNs. And this is, again, supporting the goals. The environment has a big deal to do with the conditions. So Jeannie Connery, who is, I think, the best medical leader the world has ever seen, I mean, she's fantastic. She led the OBGYNs in tying in exposure and toxic. And look what they did, Shannon, in the Paris meeting last October. 130 countries said these pesticides and toxins are no longer tolerated in foods, prenatal supplements, baby food. These chemicals and metals have to be at these low levels. So I mentioned to you the level of uranium. Uranium should not be more than, let's say, 5 parts per billion. We've measured them, Shannon, as high as 1,000 parts per billion. Mm. We've measured lead at 40 and 50 times safe levels in prenatals. So every product that passes the testing will get a certification, and that certification will show it meets these very tough standards.
Okay.
Really exciting stuff.
It's very exciting. There's so much to process there. Can I ask a couple of questions before we go on?
Sure. Yeah.
So in terms of the lab and the testing, because sometimes I know I get all revved up, David, because you'll talk about things and it's like things that are coming and other things are here. Is the testing here or is it coming soon?
We're going to be introducing the testing for the public on January 1st.
Okay.
And it'll be part of a press conference with people from the OBGYN leadership. Okay. It's a big deal. And
so January 1st, 2025.
Right, 2025. And here's the other thing. We're merging in, you mentioned artificial intelligence, the new Chat GPT. We're working with a graduate department at Columbia University. And Shannon, the amount of information and all the studies that people can see on their levels will all be vetted and then reviewed by a medical doctor. This is a monumental leap forward.
It is.
So if you have a child with autism, it's different than somebody 40 years old that's a wrestler, for example. Right now, all the lab tests are the same. But there's a vast difference in how the studies have said, what is your level of vitamin D supposed to be if you're pregnant?
Yeah.
Or if you're a 5-year-old with autism, what is your gut supposed to look like? That's the revolution that we have. It's really cool.
Well,
So-
and I know we have a lot of viewers that are parents, right? And first and foremost, we all want to get our kids tested because we want to help them. Because even though you're talking about for pregnancy, if you have a 5-year-old on the spectrum and they get tested and you see that they have something that's really high, like lead, you would want to change something now, which is going to make a difference for them throughout their life. But, and correct me if I'm wrong about that, that we still, even though we want to catch it as early as possible, we still can have a benefit if we test kids that are older, correct?
Good health begins now.
That's right. That's right. But I also have to say, David, that all of the parents are going to want to get tested too, because almost all of us have some sort of autoimmune thing going on. And I learned this very early on. One of the first DAN conferences that I went to cover when I was doing a radio show back when, I had just been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And I heard a parent, I was interviewing people like, a reporter on the street kind of thing at this conference. And I heard somebody say that they just got tested and were positive for an autoimmune disorder. And then I went to one of the talks and the speaker said, we're just curious because we're hearing this from a lot of people. How many people in this room are either in the process of being tested or have tested and have gotten a diagnosis for an autoimmune disorder? And almost every person in the room raised their hand. It was probably 150 people in the room, all raising their hands. And now when I'm around parents, I ask them, it's pretty pervasive. So I think the parents are going to want to get tested too, David. Are you guys set up for all of that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And my heart is with the autism community, even though PDY is everything. So I think it's really important that we all maintain good health. Parents with autism, many of them have the same genetic makeups as their children.
Yeah.
They are much more susceptible to autoimmune disease, metal accumulation, gut issues, and with testing, and then there's a step-by-step process that you can go through to say, how do I correct these? And then you can go to your doctor, but at least you'll be knowledgeable about this condition before you talk to a doctor. And that's the important thing. Is this not like a broken arm? It's a condition that you have to deal with every single day.
Yes.
So I'm going to do this real fast.
Okay, you go.
Time. PDY is the first 1,300 days, which means before pregnancy and for about 2 to 3 years of the infancy, including baby food, infant food, everything being tested. Home air is one of the most toxic things on this planet, 5 times more dangerous than outside air. You got all these VOCs. So we have solutions for all of that we've been working with the doctors on. So we want to go ahead and reduce the complications during pregnancy, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes. And Dr. Berger in Florida, who I think is the best autism medical doctor on the planet. I get in trouble to say that, but David has had 2,000 women that have had live births using this P2I program. David was the father of P2I treatment. Shannon, almost no preterm babies, almost no health conditions. He said, I've got the most boring pediatric practice, but he doesn't have any of the medical problems that the other doctors do because he did it. So again, media campaign, websites, and we will have web training courses for doctors that parents can audit. They can go in and hear the same thing the doctors are. So unlike MAPS, which is you've got to be live and you got to be a doctor, I believe that what we want to do is open this up to the parents and everybody to understand the medical and be able to do the prompts on ChatGPT-4 if they want to.
Yeah.
Okay, a large media campaign starting with a press conference, and then everyone will have access to step-by-step books on how to go ahead and get rid of these things, how to improve your gut. And a lot of these things are not difficult once you know what you're looking for. And here are the certification courses. And again, we know what we're doing on this. We have an amazing group of people, including on the board is, I don't know, I hate to characterize it. Doreen Grant-Pachet is one of my favorite people in the universe. She's on our board. Doreen has been a visionary ever since I've known her in this community. And I'm very proud that Doreen has done a lot to go ahead and make this a reality and further the vision of Dr. Rimland. So I do want to give her credit because applied behavior treatment is actually a form of treatment as well.
Yeah.
But as Doreen said, it's very hard to do the behavior treatment if the kid has got serious gastrointestinal issues,
Of course.
or the metals are causing them to be anxious and nervous, and having being sick all the time with autoimmune conditions. So what we want to introduce is, we're really close now, Shannon, to being able to introduce a brand new way of looking at things. And I want to say I'm very privileged, and I was going to mention this, but when you said labels are destructive because they can cut out the dignity of a person.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosed 14 years ago with terminal cancer. I lost almost every friend I had.
Mm.
People didn't want to talk to me because they saw the label of cancer rather than David.
Mm.
I was still David, but they treated me as somebody who was dying of cancer. And I knew what it was like to be living with a label, and I do not want to do that. The autism genes are not defective genes. They're basically genes that enhance intelligence and mental abilities. And Shannon, you work with parents. Aren't they some of the brightest people you know?
Absolutely.
It's the same genes.
Their kids
It's
are
the same-
brighter, but,
Yeah.
but yes, the parents are bright people, but the kids are amazing. Absolutely
bright.
amazing.
Yeah, sometime talk to Doreen about the study she did with 35 children, where she did early start Denver model programming at the age of 1, reducing the effect of the toxic damage done to the frontal lobal area.
Yeah.
Those 35 kids did not develop any of the medical problems with autism, and they averaged 120 IQs.
Yeah.
So Dr. Rimland, when I first met him, said, David, there are 2 things that you have to understand about the parent community. Because I was a hotshot attorney, right?
Right.
At the time.
Right.
My dad was the one that was working with Rimland on Kirkman. And he said, number 1, you'll never meet parents of a child with autism that you don't like.
That's right.
Well, I thought, that's not possible. I don't like very many people as an attorney. The second thing he said is, many, perhaps most of them, will be smarter than you. And I thought, what am I getting myself into? This can't be true. That's been true for 20 years. That number 1, I've never found a parent I have not liked. And number 2, many, if not most of them, are smarter than me, and I learned from listening.
Yes.
And PWI was grown out of people saying, oh my God, I sprayed my whole home with pesticides. Oh my God, I was eating fish and sushi. Oh my God, my lead pipes in my plumbing accumulated so much lead in me. I want to make sure people do not blame themselves for the environmental exposure that they have, because nobody knew. We know now.
That's
we
right.
know now. So I think there's difference. I don't want anybody to be listening to this say, oh my God, what did I do? Nothing. Yeah. Nobody knew about this.
And it's not as if, I love that you said good health starts now, because we want to start as soon as possible, because it's not as if there aren't things that we can do to mitigate some of the things that have happened, that we can live better lives. Our children can live better lives if we reduce some things and increase other things. That's really what I've learned from Dr. David Berger. And we've had him on the show many times before, and he talked about the fact that parents would come in, and of course, everybody who spends time with him loves him. He's just this amazing, wonderful person. But they would come in with their kids with autism, but eventually the parent would say, I'm having this issue. And so he would test their blood and urine and say, increase this, decrease this. And he saw that they were healthier and that their subsequent children were healthier, which is what started all of this from his point of view, his P2I treatment. And now he has people from around the world who are getting ready to be pregnant with subsequent children when they have children on the autism spectrum, who come to him, and he gets them to their optimal self to be the best pregnant individual that they can be so that they have the healthiest pregnancy and the healthiest child. It's not rocket science, right? But it isn't being, it's not mainstream yet. And I'm so excited that you're going to take this more mainstream on January 1st. We want to be a part of that, David. Here, well, I want you to be my first interview.
Community is where all of this started. It started with understanding that this is not a hardwired defective condition, but these brilliant genes from autism, free of any kind of chemicals and heavy metals, it frees them to reach their potential. And that's what we want for the future generations, that the sacrifice everybody has gone to with logical damage.
I want to acknowledge that Brian has written in and said that this is captivating, and that copper and zinc levels, he says, I have been told, are really serious concerns for kids with ASD and are neurodiverse. And I'm saying hi to Rodney as well. So, David, you're going to have this press conference early 2025, if not January 1st. I want to book you to be our first guest on in January of 2025, so that we can be talking about how people can get this testing, what it costs. I'm just going to guess that in the beginning, it's not going to be covered by your insurance. Any idea of what your price points are going to be? And are they going to be individual tests? Sorry.
All the tests we have are CLIA approved, which means they can be covered by insurance.
Love that.
All have CPT codes, but since we're going to be out of network, people have to probably apply for their own insurance coverage, but many of these will be covered. We're trying to keep all the tests at around $100 to $150, which is way below the normal market price for these kinds of tests. But it's not just the testing. I believe that when people get a test result, for example, metals or microbiome, they have to have the ability to understand what it means to them or their child, or if they're going to be pregnant. Shannon, somebody who's pregnant cannot take the same amount of lead that I can.
That's right.
So all of the reference ranges, all the explanations will be part of an AI-generated summary of all the studies on pregnancy and heavy metals. It will be explained in easy-to-understand terms and be reviewed by a medical doctor before it goes out of our lab. So a direct answer is these tests are not going to be expensive. They're very easy to take. The results will go to you. And if you want to discuss them with the doctor, we would encourage that.
Yeah.
But we're going to give you the information so that you have it, so you understand it. And then most of the things that we test for, Shannon, within 1 month, people could turn those around. Healthier guts. And you hear a lot of that now about chronic conditions with children because of food.
Yeah.
It's not just food. It's really the toxicity and the chemicals in the food, which are the problem.
Amen to that. Okay, we've only got about 6 minutes left, and I really want to talk about Dr. Bernie Rimland, about his legacy. For people, it's hard to believe, but we're at a point where a lot of people may not know who Dr. Bernie Rimland is. Talk a little bit about him, his legacy, and what you're trying to do to keep it alive.
Bernie Rimland was my mentor and a great man. And Bernie Rimland challenged the notion from Bernie Bettelheim that children with autism were coming from being rejected by their mothers. Most of them at the time were institutionalized, and it was a tragedy. What Dr. Rimland said, this is a neurological condition that has been caused by environmental problems that makes these children susceptible to medical conditions. He was right. He formed the Autism Research Institute. He fought all of his life. He was a PhD. But Bernie was the one that I would talk to, and he would say, David, you have to listen to the parents because they understand their children, and then be trustworthy and honest with them and provide solutions. Kirkman never advertised. We always said that the word of mouth would get people to talk about where they were from. But Dr. Rimland, I talked to 3 or 4 times a week for 10 years. And he started the conferences. He encouraged me to do the MAPS conference. All of the ideas I have come from Bernie Rimland, and then in discussions with people that knew him, like Doreen Grant-Pache.
Yeah.
And I want to give credit here that people say, wow, David, you have a lot of great ideas. No, I listened to Bernie. And when Bernie said, will you promise to do this for me? Make sure you get in the medical literature. Don't bypass the science. We don't want this to be seen as a fringe idea. Get the science to support it. And then his big project was P2I.
Yeah.
Bernie said, now that we have treatment started, make treatment start at conception, and we will finally get to the bottom. And Bernie had a son, Mark, who was the subject of the Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman. I'll tell a quick story. Bernie called up the production studio. Dustin Hoffman was going to do it as an idiot rather than an autistic adult. Bernie called up and said, no, do not do that. He came over and met Mark Rimland. And when Dustin Hoffman saw him, he said, Mark, do you know who I am? And he said, yes, my father has a picture of you when you were much younger.
Love that.
Dustin Hoffman started laughing and he said, Bernie, I'm going to spend several weeks with your son, and I've learned something. And so that was what Bernie did. Bernie challenged all of us, and the only allegiance we have is to the individual and the family. That's it.
Yep.
We don't have an alliance to doctors or treating institutions or money. We have an alliance to telling the truth and doing the right thing. That's it.
Love it. And you're keeping that alive. Brian has asked the question that is uppermost in my mind. Brian, I swear we're related somewhere. He says, can we reserve for testing now? Families that will really, really, really want to get info about their ASD kids ASAP. And I'm going to ask, is there any advanced testing where you want some people to be guinea pigs? Because I know people who would like to sign up before January 1st.
I know. February 1st is likely going to be the press conference, end of January.
Okay.
And as a CLIA lab, we can't send out anything with guinea pig trials. I would love to do that and just give it away free like I do with Kirkman, but I will go ahead and let you know. And when it comes out, there'll be websites and it'll be available, and everything will be a 5-day turnaround. So there's no great delay once we start. They're all validated now. We just have to prepare the final thing, the kits and everything, but we can't do it without having all the CLIA I's dotted and T's crossed. And that will be February, but it's not going to be later than that.
Okay. February 1st then. We're going to hold on until then. Okay. Well, David, I just want to say that I'm so grateful to know you, and I know how hard you have been working. And I hope that health-wise that you are fine and clear. And I cannot believe that anybody would have forsaken you for anything, least of all for having a diagnosis of cancer. We will never forsake you. You are amazing, and I think that you have done Bernie proud, and the work that you're doing is having a huge impact and will continue to have a huge impact, not just on autism, but on all kinds of chronic diseases and all kinds of cancers that, as you said, we're starting to find out have more to do with toxicity than genetics. So I'm going to thank you on behalf of everyone. And they're writing in and saying thank you also. And please keep us posted, because we very much want to be a part of getting the word out so that people can get this testing when it's available.
Thank you, and thanks for all you do. And I'm sorry we haven't talked in the last 5 years. I've thought of you often.
Likewise.
And thank you so much for today. And I will do my best. My health is perfect now, by the way. But I learned how to get healthy from the autism community. Trust yourself and your instincts. Listen to doctors, but don't necessarily believe them all.
Yep.
And I worked on my immune system in China for 6 months, and all the cancer was resolved.
Wow.
And I learned something about getting your health right, and I've tried ever since to do it right. Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that so much. I know somebody needs to hear that today. But thank you, David. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. All right,
Bye-bye.
Take care. I just want to say in closing, tomorrow we're back with Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet. And I believe that tomorrow we're talking about bedtime issues that I know a lot of you are dealing with that. Plus which, there's a time change coming up. and right? So it gets a little wonky around the bedtime thing as the light changes and everything. So Dr. Grampy is going to talk about that tomorrow, but of course, she will answer any questions that you guys have on any topic because that's how she rolls. Don't forget, All Ghouls Gala is this weekend. We're going to give you up-to-the-minute information about the online auction because there's good stuff that you can purchase from wherever you are. You don't have to come to the All Ghouls Gala. But if you're looking for a place to be in Los Angeles on Saturday night and you cannot afford the price of going to the World Series, you can be at the event. We will have screens showing the World Series. It's $125. I still have a handful of tickets left. It's, all the open bar, all the food is inclusive, the DJ, the dance floor. Plus, we'll have a bunch of fundraising activities that we hope you'll want to participate in, not the least of which is the live auction, which anybody can do anywhere. So please join us for the All Ghouls Gala. I will be there. And as I said, Dr. Grampy will be there as well. So we're back tomorrow with Ask Dr. Doreen. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me, plus one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.